No.
Welcome to Reminiscing with History Makers. We're here today with John Wright. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
For starters, when did you join APCO?
Well, I originally started going to APCO meetings late 1984, 1985. What happened was our agency was trying to get new radio licenses through, and part of it was that you had to have coordination of your license, and APCO was the coordinator. And so they sent me to first couple of APCO meetings to try and get licenses worked on. And from there, it just started going to a few meetings off and on. And then one of our past presidents, Gary Gray, who was actually serving as president at the time, convinced me that you should be joining this group instead of just showing up at random meetings. And so I joined. I was joined in about 1985, 86, and I let my membership lapse a year, and then I came back and renewed about 1989 and been an active member ever since.
Could you describe your agency and position?
Originally, I started out for the Riverside Fire Department, and I worked there for 11 years. I was a firefighter. Went over to the police department in 1984. And I worked at the police department. I started out as a supervisor in their 911 center when they combined from police and fire, and I was their fire expert. And worked my way up, shift supervisor, training supervisor, all the way up to where I was when I left. I was the interim communications manager, and I was a member of command staff.
Could you give a brief list of your responsibilities during the length of service?
Well, obviously, working as a telecommunicator, and then working as shift supervisor, and the typical dispatch center operations. Because I had military, I was a radioman during the Vietnam War, and I had military communications training, and I'd had professional training in college in electronics. That the department and the city needed somebody to be more of their communications analyst, and so as I moved up, they moved me into an analyst spot, and I got that job, and that was within the police department. And so my job was really doing a lot of their technology stuff, working on purchase recs, writing specifications for technical items, managing their entire radio system, programming radios. So I've done a little of everything from fire operations, police. So it was an interesting career, to say the least.
Sure. You mentioned a little earlier, but could you describe what course drew you to APCO, and if there was a particular person influential in that?
Well, yeah. Again, it was probably past President Gary Gray was real influential to get me to join. But to get really active in APCO. We also in our chapter had past President Jack Keating, and Jack was really the one who kind of kept after me to say, you keep coming to meetings, you're here every month, why don't you get a little more involved, we could use you. And so they kind of fished me into being their sergeant at arms, because that's kind of like, it's really easy. And eventually I ended up I served as almost every position. I've served as chapter president. I've served as their operations chair. I've served as treasurer for 8 years. I've served as their secretary and PIO. So I've almost everything except executive council delegate I've done within the chapter.
Would you describe your APCO activities at the state chapter and national level during your tenure?
Well, again, as at the state level, I was obviously president of our chapter, and we did a lot of work with the Northern California chapter, so there was a lot of joint meetings that we held to collaborate on issues within the state of California. And then we always attended the Western Regional Conferences, because then there was meetings where we would meet with our counterparts from the other states and hear the issues that are going on there. Got a lot of good training out of those. And then I participated on several committees. I was vice chair of the Spectrum Management Committee. I chaired Telecommunications Management Committee when they had that committee years ago, and then participated in several. I was pretty much, once they got me active, I stayed active even at the national level.
Do you have a favorite activity that stands out?
A favorite activity? Well, of course, going to conference is like, it's the best because they get to meet people. And I think that of all of it, it's the networking and the getting the opportunity to hear how people do things in other areas. So I think of all the activities that we do at APCO, it's probably the annual conference and that networking opportunity that it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing.
Would you say that your APCO membership has had a direct effect on your career in public safety communications?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The contacts you make when we needed to do training manuals, when we needed to do operating procedures, having those contacts at APCO made it where you could reach out and say, does somebody have an example of how to do a specific operational guide, or somebody has training, where did you get some training? You get tons of people that just quickly give you back stuff that you can use. So it's a huge resource, and it made a great difference because you could reach out quickly, even to the commercial side. When you go to conference and you see all the commercial exhibitors, it does stick with you when you go back and somebody says, now we have a project or we have a grant and we need to build a mobile communications vehicle is one of the grants that we got. And it was very easy to go back and start talking to those exhibitors that you met at an APCO conference and say, I remember there was somebody there that has these radios or has these workstations or has the links that we need to make this work, and you start going back and get quotes and things from those people.
What would you say you like most about APCO?
The people. It's the members. It's a group of like-minded people that come from very diverse backgrounds and diverse locations, but we all seem to have that same thing in common. It's like I always told people, when I was on the executive committee, the best part of being on the executive committee was actually getting to go to all these different chapters, or to go visit comm centers. And it's amazing. You can walk into a comm center and you can stand there for about 10 minutes looking at the people, and I can start to put faces and names of people in my center that they have the same kind of person or personality in their center. You go, oh, there's a Mary or there's a Bob or because it's like they're the same kind of people everywhere.
What do you think that APCO does better than anyone else?
Well, I think APCO is really connected to their membership. I think a lot of associations just kind of take their money and say, join us. APCO really does connect with their people, and they try to represent their people, and they try to, our association is very diverse. You have people that do different jobs and have different backgrounds and responsibilities, and the association really tries to encompass that. So it's really a well-rounded representation of our industry, and I think it's wonderful. There's nothing like it.
Do you think there's anything that APCO needs to do to move forward and to stay current?
I think they just need to be cognizant of trying to be forward-thinking and look forward to the new technologies, the new industries. As everything is changing so rapidly and things are going to more digital and things are going more interconnected, I think social media and analytics of things that they send, all of this stuff is going to be things that the association needs to be looking at and making sure that they're the leaders. The association has always touted themselves as the leaders in public safety communications. They've done a great job of that. In order to be the leader, you need to be out front, and I think that's where they need to be going.
Do you have anything that stands out as a significant contribution during your time in office?
There's a few things. When I first came on, my term was from August of 2014 to August of 2015. And in the early summer of 2014, we initiated working with NENA and APCO and 4 of the major cellular carriers to try and improve indoor location accuracy. And that came about during my term, where we actually got the agreement together, got everybody to agree, and we took that to the FCC, and the FCC adopted it. And then it was a 5-year transition now for their adoption of their rulemaking. And we're now into a couple of years of that, and it's making great progress. So now we actually will know not only the X and Y location, but also the Z or vertical. And so eventually that should map right into a dispatch center. When you get a 911 call, it's not going to tell you what building they're in, but what floor they're on besides. So I think that was very important. When I ran for office, my platform, as it were, when I ran, was to professionalize the telecommunicators. And I think that the biggest accomplishment was the fact that we came in, and when my first day on the job, as it were, asked Derek Porch, our CEO at the time was, or still is, but Derek Porch, we need to get a hold of the Department of Labor. I wanted APCO to push for doing the upgrade of the telecommunicator to make it a profession. And that process was initiated. It turned out the Department of Labor every 10 years looks at their list of what job titles are and their descriptions, and they're categorized. And we were able to promote that with them, that we need to move forward. And it was by the help of the membership, who all jumped in there and wrote emails and support letters, that we still, and it's still in progress. It's 2 years later after I started it, and it's still going, but it's still going in progress. And I'm hopeful that, whether it's on Martha Carter's watch or if it's on Holly Waite's watch, that eventually one of them will be able to get up there and stand up and say they've been reclassified officially, and now they're considered public safety professionals. And I think if that happens, I'll be, it's not about me or any of the presidents that it happens on, but it's about the fact that we actually accomplished, and they're being recognized. So that's probably my biggest one that I keep still hopeful it'll happen. And of course, we did the long-range strategic plan on my presidency. We started the leadership development initiative, where we're trying to develop more leaders from within the association. That was one where we started to look at committee structures, and we were trying to find ways to give more people more opportunity to be able to fill into a leadership role and get some of that experience. And I think that's ongoing, and I think that's working. And then we got the P25 CAPRAD grant during my presidency, which is huge for moving forward with upgrading the computer system that's tracking all of the licenses and stuff. So, but it was a fun year. Very short, goes quick, but I'd do it again in a heartbeat.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for your involvement, and thanks for being on Reminiscing with History Makers.
Well, thank you.